Hello Internet, welcome to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. I have been thinking recently about this book, Wintering, by Katherine May. She's an English writer. The subtitle of this book is Wintering, the Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times. It's one of these books that's a sort of memoir that is mixed together with a type of sociology and also a sort of self-help guide. So it's like an inspirational memoir, and I'm starting to realize that this is like a genre in itself. H is for Hawk, The Salt Path, this book. It is a particular thing. And I kind of want to talk about how this book works and doesn't work, what the ideas of it are, and why I particularly have been thinking about it. Basically, the book is about how Katherine May experienced a kind of burnout. Her husband was badly ill. You might recognize this trope from The Salt Path. I mean, it's a real thing that happened in her life, but it's also something that people structure these type of memoirs around. And she experienced a period of low energy, difficulties getting things done. She also lived with undiagnosed autism until she was an adult. She's a few years older than me, and I think people of my generation quite often didn't get an autism diagnosis when they were children or teenagers. Now, this book, in my opinion, has a really interesting premise. The premise is that wintering, metaphorically, is something that all people need to go through in the same way as Earth, nature, goes through it. It's a period of low productivity, a period of rest, a period of hibernation and sleep, following which one can experience a certain type of rebirth. You might recognize this type of thinking from pagan ideas and pantheology. You might also recognize it from psychology, that we need periods of restitution. So it's a metaphor, but what I thought initially was interesting about Katherine May's book is that she made a case that people who live in places where there is a more extreme winter are maybe more practiced at finding ways to survive or get through, or maybe even benefit from the winter time. And this is sort of the thesis of the book. So she kind of sets out to write a book where she will learn from those who must winter each year, how she personally can manage this period of winter in her own life. I mean, if she'd have done that, if she'd have managed it, the book would be excellent. In practice, the book is, to me, very disappointing, maybe because it's scuppered by the memoir aspect. She writes a lot about how she's honestly so reduced, tired and exhausted while she's trying to work on this book that she can't do the things that she intended to do in order to actually write the book she set out to write. So she kind of hedges it, half does it. She gets pregnant at a certain point in the story, and with all of the sickness and confusion and fog that comes with her pregnancy, she's not really able to perhaps learn as much as she would have done otherwise. I don't really understand why the people who have given publication quotes to this book found it so inspirational, but it might have something to do with the fact that it's written as a kind of antidote to a world based around continual production, trying to do as much as you can, the kind of fast-paced rat race of the contemporary world. And that leads me to something that I think is problematic for me in reading this book. Katherine May's personal, daily, and economic issues are extremely middle class. She represents a section of the British public who think they live normal lives, but actually statistically I think are far more privileged than most of the people in Britain. However, they are probably the people who write and read most of the books published on the British publishing market. So while I read this book, she was kind of trying to tell me, how I should kind of tolerate being less productive, less successful. I couldn't help thinking about periods of my life where I was, very, very poor, and where the British winter really was a reckoning every year to get through, when I was living in South London and, earning £800 a month and trying to be a writer, and had no safety net behind me whatsoever. So in the parts of this book where she's kind of trying to express her own stress around not being able to work, I just really didn't find it very relatable. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this book today is because I live in Tromsø, and Tromsø increasingly is, I won't say overrun, but there are a great number of tourists here. And the tourists come to do things like meet huskies, see the Aurora Borealis, and basically experience this island up in the north of Norway that they consider to be somewhat exotic, which also for me, when I originally moved from the UK to Norway, about 15 years ago, I also found it exotic, so I understand. But it's kind of become a massive industry. But she writes as a part of this book where she's trying to talk to people who found ways of getting through winter. She writes about how she came to Tromsø to experience it. This to me could have been really interesting because the people who live here, we live from, sometime in November to sometime in March with mostly night. And from the period of kind of November, December to through late January, we don't see the sun at all. I actually saw the sun for the first time this year, yesterday. So what are the ways that we kind of socialize or adapt? What are the things that we do, the rituals that we have to get us through this time? That would be a really interesting learning process for the author of this book, had she spent some time here and learned about it. But actually what she did is she came to Tromsø for a few days, heavily pregnant, and she went on organized tourist excursions every day where she bussed around trying to see the Aurora Borealis. And she went on an excursion that is organized by a group of Sami people, the indigenous people of the Arctic or Arctic Europe, and kind of learned a little bit about the old Sami traditions and about reindeer farming, and ate some soup. And she wants to tell the reader that she learned something about herself through this experience, which is basically a kind of package holiday. And I'm skeptical that you can really learn anything significant about the place that you've been by going on this type of trip. Particularly, she describes the Aurora Borealis as something that is an act of faith to see because it's so vague in the sky, not at all like the time-lapse photographs she's seen, that it's almost an act of belief for her to be able to see it. And I just thought, well, you didn't have a good week, because sometimes the Aurora Borealis really is very visibly green, and sometimes also with areas of pink, and sometimes it's across the entire sky, even with light pollution across Tromsø. She's describing a very particular experience of her holiday, and she's trying to generalize something about how the people of Arctic Norway experience their lives in a way that's just wholly impossible. I couldn't recognize this place that I live in and love in her account of driving around on a bus and going out on a boat. Now, I think that a book about the natural rhythms of life and the natural rhythms of nature and how these are reflected within our own physical functioning, how this translates into our way of dealing with each other and meeting each other sociologically, and how it has something to say for how we should relate to ourselves, tolerate perhaps periods of lower activity, periods of tiredness, maybe embrace that, maybe find the beauty in a period of blue. It's an excellent concept for a book. I felt like Katherine May either wasn't cut out for it or just wasn't doing well enough at the time she wrote it to really be able to kind of get the results out of the concept that she was looking for. But I also wondered whether this is a genre thing, a taste thing. I'm starting to think, after reading a few of these types of books, that this kind of self-help, light anthropology, memoir genre that seems to be quite popular is just not for me, because it never does any of the things it sets out to do quite well enough. It's like it just mixes them together in a kind of extended essay. I suppose you could say it's almost influenced by the genre of blogging. And for me, it's repeatedly, when I've tried to read these books, been a disappointment. I guess that's it from me for now on this book, Wintering by Katherine May. And the thoughts that I've been having about it in recent days. I read it like a year ago, and I'm still thinking about it. I'm still slightly irritated by it. I guess you could say at least it made an impact on me. Do you ever read this type of thing? What do you think about it? Do you enjoy it? Do you like it? Do you think I'm right about this as a genre? Or am I missing something? And I hope to see you again soon. Lots of love.